What is up everyone, and welcome to some more F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This time we're going to be in Spain, both with and without the S. Yes, it is the Spanish Grand Prix round 5 of season 7 of My Team Career Mode. Last time out we were at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Imola, and it wasn't a washout. It actually did go ahead, but unfortunately my ICE washed itself out within 2 laps of the sprint race, and that put me on the back foot for the remainder of the weekend. I started in 22nd in the race and managed to make a pretty decent recovery to P10, scored 1 point, but it did mean that I lost the lead of the championship, having been leading it after my win in China the race before. Alex Albon, my teammate, now leads the championship by a reasonably comfortable margin of about 10 points, I think. And if he wins again today, then all of a sudden he will be looking in a very good spot in the championship. But you know, it's still very early days. We've only been through 4 races so far. This is number 5, and there's 22 races to a season, so plenty can change before the end. Now, Spain is a track I've never won at, and for those of you who've watched previous videos, you will know that my goal this season, apart from winning the championship, is to try and win at as many venues I have never won at before. We did not manage it in Australia. However, Spain presents a new opportunity to maybe pick up a win at a track I've never won at before. And then the next one, I think, after that is going to be Azerbaijan in just a couple races time, actually. You know, we've got Monaco coming up next and then Azerbaijan after that. So hopefully we can get a good result there as well. But now we have to turn our attention towards the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. It is a track that I actually kind of enjoy, despite the fact that, you know, it doesn't necessarily throw up the most interesting racing in real life. I always feel like I have a pretty good time around here. I'm very consistent around this track. I rarely ever make mistakes. The only time I've ever made mistakes has been when I've taken too much curb on a corner or something like that and perhaps given myself a little bit of damage. And that has happened in a few races that we've done beforehand. But hopefully that won't be too big of an issue. So yeah, realistically, whilst I'm targeting the win here, if I can get a podium finish, I will be pretty happy with that. Because, you know, there's a lot of strong drivers at the moment, and this has never been my strongest circuit, even if I do enjoy racing here. I think my best ever result was a P2 in a race where I was on a strong strategy which enabled me to carve my way back through the field. I felt pretty fast in practice, but basing this off this leaderboard, it doesn't seem particularly convincing for me to say I was fast. You know, I only outperformed 3 people. You know, we did do most of our running at the beginning of the session, but that shouldn't mean that I was like over a second off the pace. So I don't really know what happened there. Hopefully we can turn it around in time for qualifying. However, it is going to be a wet race, and so for that reason I'm going to maybe try and sacrifice my qualifying a little bit, run on a wet setup in the hopes that you know, my race will be a bit stronger for it. If we run that wet setup, perhaps we can carve our way through the field against those people who perhaps aren't running such high downforce setups. I don't know. Yeah, high downforce. I was trying to remember which way around it works. So yeah, I'll be running a bit more downforce. It might mean I'm a bit slower through the straights. Higher tyre pressures as well, which means that my tyres might be more prone to overheating. Don't be surprised if towards the end of my quali laps my tyres are overheating quite a lot. But hopefully, yes, this should mean that come race day, I will be a lot more competitive. You know, running higher tyre pressures means that they have a bit more grip, and that is going to be incredibly useful in the wet. And also, obviously, it means that they'll stay at a higher temperature when the water is cooling them down. Anyway, I didn't really talk much about Q1 because I was talking about tyre pressures, but we did make it through in P9. If we can make it through to Q3, then I'll be pretty happy with that. Obviously, I'm targeting sort of around maybe a top 5 in qualifying. I think that would be an ideal scenario. But you can see that the gap was pretty pronounced between myself and Albon. Meanwhile, further afield, Russell qualified 22nd, and Stroll was also out in Q1. But the gap between Russell and Schumacher in 15th was less than a tenth. Or, well, actually, no, it was just over a tenth. But the gap between Piastri, who was safe, and Russell, who wasn't safe, who was last, was a tenth. So yeah, that is a very small margin. I was only 3/10 faster than Russell in that session. So, you know, if I didn't quite string together a good lap, I could have been eliminated very quickly. We go out again in Q2. We go on a fresh set of soft compound tyres to start things out. I only used 1 set in the previous session, so I've still got 3 available to me. That becomes 2 after that lap. We go on that same set of tyres again, and we are going to be very comfortably through. We did a lot better of a lap time this time, 1:16.1, and that saw us through in P4. So, you know, that's about where I would want to be on the grid come the end of Q3. But there are a lot of things that we have to do before that. We have to do probably, I'd say, 1 or 2 more laps. You know, we've got 2 sets of soft compound tyres we can run on. Not as many shocks this time, but definitely one big shock that got eliminated in this occasion was Charles Leclerc, and he wasn't even close to Esteban Ocon actually. So both Alpines making it through again, both McLarens, both Red Bulls, and then both Jaguars, and then the Mercedes of Zhou Guanyu taking Russell's place in Q3, where Russell was taking Zhou Guanyu's place at the back of the grid. They decided they would do the old switcheroo here in Barcelona, and yeah, fair play to Zhou Guanyu. Anyway, we do a 1:15.9 to start things off, and honestly, that is a pretty good time. You know, I have not been in the 1:15s all weekend, so if we don't improve on that, I won't be too dissatisfied. However, you can see we're about 4 tenths up as we come into the final sector of the final lap. You know, we're on another fresh set of tyres, so maybe we can find some sort of improvement. We just need to take these last few corners well, and I mean, we could even be in with a shout of pole here. We're only 4 tenths off of pole. Unfortunately, yeah, these last few corners didn't quite go according to plan. I'm only going to be improving by about 2 tenths, I think, if that. So it'll be a 1:15.7 in the end. Not quite enough to match Max Verstappen, but it does see us into P2, which is a lot better than I was expecting, especially considering the setup I was running here in qualifying.
With qualifying finished, it's time to remind ourselves once again of our top 3. Verstappen, Robinson, and Lando Norris. Goodbye for now then, but really we're just getting started. Make sure to join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Once again, the McLarens and Alpines doing a very stellar job. P3 and P6 for the McLarens and P5 and P7 for the Alpines. You know, these are supposed to be some of the worst cars on the grid at the moment, I think. And yeah, I don't know, they're actually doing incredibly well in what can only be described as absolute boats compared to my car and the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. So yeah, flipping the script a little bit, but you know, I think they will probably need a boat for the race with how wet it's looking like it's going to potentially be. So yeah, I'm hoping this wet setup is going to come up trumps for us on race day, but I think there is due to be a little bit of sunshine as well at some point, or at least a dry running at some stage of the race. Hopefully that is a very short spell, because my tyres are going to overheat very, very quickly with the tyre pressures I'm running. So I need to be on wet tyres basically as soon as possible. Fortunately, it looks like, according to this forecast, the rain is going to come down quite quickly. So let's see if we can get anything done on this wet setup when we get into the race.
The Spanish Grand Prix has been a permanent fixture on the Formula One calendar for over 30 years now, and for good reason. Do you remember Michael Schumacher's absolute dominance here in that rain-soaked Grand Prix in 1996? That day he took his first ever victory for Ferrari, and we've had many more iconic moments since. The Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya then, a high-speed 2.89-mile circuit which demands an efficient downforce package and bravery on the part of the driver, especially through the blind right of turn 9, which we might just see taken flat out this weekend. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and Robinson completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Albon, Esteban Ocon, and Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Gasly, Zhou, and Charles Leclerc, Mick Schumacher, Fittipaldi, Oscar Piastri, and Latifi, Magnussen, Stroll, Carlos Sainz, and Théo Pourchaire, Drugovich, Lundgaard, Russell, and Robert Schwartzman. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Natalie Pinkham joins me once again in the commentary box. It's fantastic to have you with us today. I'm curious though, how do you think the drivers stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It'll keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
After the points finished last race, let's aim to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I would say we have a pretty good shot of getting into the points in this race. As long as the car doesn't break down, then we should be absolutely fine. I don't want to warm up the tyres too much on this occasion, actually, just enough that there's going to be grip off the line, but I don't want to warm them up to an absolutely ridiculous level like I usually do. You know, sometimes I go as high as like 85, 86 degrees, but this time I'm going to leave it to maybe about 82 or something like that. I reckon it's probably a better way of doing it. Otherwise the tyres are going to overheat. However, I don't know if I'm going to be on these tyres for very long, because you might be able to see that the rain is already coming down, despite the fact that it's only the formation lap. I don't think we're going to be on these soft compound tyres for very long at all, you know. I think, honestly, if the option was there, I would have dived into the pits immediately, but it wasn't, and the lights have gone out now. I wasn't really paying attention to them, but here we go. You know, we got away not very well, and Albon has already jumped us off the start. We moved off to cover Norris, and in doing so, let Albon through, and yeah, he is now in P2. But unsurprisingly, I'm not super competitive on these tyres. You know, my high downforce compared to these guys' lower downforce setups is probably going to help them in the early stages of this race. But once we get into the rain, I am hoping that things will be better for me, and maybe I can challenge Albon back, and maybe even Verstappen as well for the lead of this race. But we'll have to wait and see what happens regarding that. For now, we just need to try and hold on to this position for as long as we can. You know, we got Ocon directly behind us in P4, and then Norris in P5, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, and Gasly make up the top 8 at the moment. And then I don't know who's in 9th. It's a Haas, and there were no Haases in Q3. So clearly one of them has had a very good start. I think it's Schwartzman, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, we are just trying to make sure that we can defend this position for as long as possible, because Ocon is going to be supremely fast in the straights. I'm hoping that if DRS does get enabled, it's not enabled for very long, because with DRS these guys are going to absolutely blitz me. It's not even going to be a competition. So we move now on to the end of lap 2, and we're going to be starting lap 3. You can see that the weather is not quite severe enough just yet, but DRS has been enabled, so clearly the rain is not so bad that they're deeming DRS unusable, which is interesting, because, you know, the rain is getting a little bit stronger now. You know, the grip on the track is falling away a little bit, and lo and behold, about 40 seconds later they disabled DRS. So effectively it never actually got used. You know, it got disabled right before we got to the first DRS zone. It probably, I think maybe Albon would have had it to Verstappen, but that's about it. Anyway, we're coming into the pits now, DRS disabled. That means one thing and one thing only. It's time for intermediate tyres. And yeah, we're going to be going on to the inters, and I'm hoping that we will be able to compete with the cars around us, and maybe make up a few positions. You know, with Albon and Verstappen staying out, there is actually a potential opportunity here, if we have good pace on these intermediate tyres, to undercut them. But I think at the moment the track is pretty, I don't know, it's still pretty balanced, I would say. It's probably equal pace on intermediates and softs. So we're going to have to wait and see where we come out in relation to them. But at the moment you can see that my grip on these tyres is not fantastic. You know, they're still warming up, obviously. But I don't want to run the risk of warming them up too much, because that's also going to be really bad for my chances of having any grip on this track. So yeah, we come around to the end of the lap now. The track is a lot wetter, and you're going to see exactly where I come out in relation to these other guys. Ocon is coming out behind me, but Verstappen and Albon are just up the road, about a second or so up the road from me. So I think I have closed the gap, maybe slightly, but not 100% sure. However, the track was not absolutely wet at the moment, and I was losing a lot of tyre grip, and that opened the door for Pierre Gasly to pull off an overtake on me with relative ease, to be honest with you. You know, it wasn't even close, and he extended the gap very, very quickly to me, to the point that I was coming under pressure from Esteban Ocon behind with you know, with no time at all passing, really. It was just, I had absolutely no grip on these tyres. You can see now the gap behind is pretty small, and Gasly is about 3 seconds ahead of me. So yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise to me, to see that despite the fact I was running a wet setup, I seem to have no grip compared to the people who were running, you know, sort of default setups. Yeah, a big shock. But anyway, we move forward through onto lap 9, and you can see that, I don't know, the gap is starting to stabilize a bit now. I'm kind of staying about 3 seconds behind Gasly. I think he's marginally faster than me, perhaps, but I don't feel like I'm going to be overtaken by Ocon every single corner anymore, which is nice. I managed to hold him off for a few laps, and yeah, we're looking like this is probably going to be the position we start to settle into. You know, the gap to Joe is staying pretty constant at about 2.5 seconds behind as well. So yeah, I think that was just the tyres sort of getting in their operating window. Initially they were running a bit hot, but now that the weather has got a bit more wet, they're starting to run in a relatively normal operating window again. But yeah, now we were on lap 15, and nothing's really happened since then. You know, the gap in front has only increased by about a second over the course of these laps, but Ocon has stayed right with me. Still, I've never really looked like I'm under pressure from him. You know, without any DRS, he's going to need to be a lot faster than me, and I just don't think he is, especially in that Alpine, which is not one of the fastest cars on the track by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, unless something drastic happens, this is exactly the result I expect we'll probably end the race with, which is kind of sad to say because there are 17 laps to go, but I can't really see anything changing unless there's some kind of, you know, safety car or something of that description. But we move now onto lap 18, and well, your wish is my command because there is a safety car. And yeah, that means that we're going to close up Gasly and Verstappen and also Albon out in front. And maybe, just maybe, now that we've got a little bit more pace on these intermediate tyres, maybe we'll be able to challenge those guys for a podium place. However, we get away off the safety car restart. You can see that Albon has crossed the line now, and I am immediately falling away from them again. I think even on these intermediate tyres in their operating window, they just have a bit more pace than me today, these three, so I think the order of business is going to simply be holding off Esteban Ocon. I don't think that my wet weather setup has really made too much of a difference. Usually I just run dry setups around tracks like this, and it doesn't tend to make too much of a difference. Maybe if it was full wet conditions, it might have changed something, but at the moment, I don't think this is going to make too much of a difference. You can see that Gasly is already about 7/10 up the road, and I think he's just going to get further and further away to the end of the Grand Prix. So really all we're going to have to worry about is Esteban Ocon behind, and see if he can mount a challenge on us and whether we can defend from him or not. We move forward just a tiny bit, and this is Kevin Magnussen. He becomes our first DNF of the race on lap 24. I don't know what the safety car was actually for earlier, because no one retired. I'm guessing someone must have gone off the track or something like that, but it wasn't obvious. But yeah, that spells the end of Kevin Magnussen's Grand Prix. And now we move on to the final few laps of the race. They were warning us a little bit about the potential for the rain to get heavier, but it never got so heavy that people started to pit for wet tyres. You know, there wasn't really that much time left in the race. I was a little bit concerned that we might have a repeat of USA Season 4, I think it was, where I was on the intermediate tyres. It got to wet conditions, but there wasn't enough time to warrant switching to wet tyres, and everyone else had the ability to drive on the inters in full wet conditions a lot better than I did, and they ended up losing like 2 or 3 positions towards the end of the race. That was not very fun, but it doesn't seem like that's what's happening here. I'm also combating some floor damage. I think you might have seen that warning that I was given towards the end of lap 30, and that was, you know, it is what it is. It doesn't seem like it's affecting me too much. You know, I'm running quite high downforce, so a little bit of a loss of downforce is not the end of the world. But yeah, we're just closing this off. We came under a little bit of pressure from Esteban Ocon there, but nothing too drastic. And yeah, that was pretty much the story of the Spanish Grand Prix from that point onwards. We just I don't know, couldn't really capitalize at the beginning of the wet period, but then as soon as the rain got a little bit heavier, we looked like we were pretty fine. You know, I think we would have, if we'd have stayed ahead of Gasly, we probably would have been able to keep Gasly behind. once we got the tyres in the operating window. But no doubt he had a bit more pace than me this weekend, as did Albon and Verstappen. So yeah, Albon crosses the line to take the victory, and then Verstappen and Gasly close behind him, and I'm going to cross the line to take P4. It's not a terrible result, but I will be wondering what might have been had I played things a little bit differently there. You know, should I have gone on to my usual setup? Not sure. Dragovic, driver of the day. Not sure what happened with him, but you know, congrats to him, and that's the story of the race.
Which has paid off in spades. A great victory here at the Spanish Grand Prix. Natalie Pinkham, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on the circuit and have come out on top.
The faces on our top three look so incredibly happy as they make their way up to the podium. A much-deserved victory and a brilliant performance from them all.
Yes, Albon takes his third victory of the season. There's only been 5 races and he's already had 3 wins. So yeah, that's very impressive performance from him. Obviously he won in Bahrain, and then he won last time out in Imola as well. So yeah, he's having a very strong season, and his championship lead will no doubt be extended by that by a significant margin. He outscored me by, I think, what, 13 or 14 points, depending on whether he got fastest lap. So yeah, I'm going to have a real battle on my hands, I think.
It's a positive result for Alexander Albon, who moves further out in front at the top of the standings. So let's review the updated driver standings. Let's focus on the driver of the day. Natalie Pinkham, come on, who do you pick?
Felipe Drugovich gets my vote today.
Let's move on to the constructors. The current leaders continue to extend their lead at the top. Meanwhile, a strong weekend from Red Bull this time out, and they improve their position in the championship. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
No real changes in any of the drivers standing top spots, although Verstappen has closed the gap to me to only 4 points. So I'm going to need a strong result next time in Monaco, and well, that's a sentence that doesn't bode well, does it? I know I got the win there last season, but that was very much an anomalous result. It's all based on qualifying. If I get a good quali in Monaco, then, you know, maybe I can get a better result than Max Verstappen. But if I get a poor qualifying, then it's going to be over before it's even begun. And yeah, GG, go next to Azerbaijan. But as for this race, I think it was pretty okay. That's what I would give it. I would give it a solid okay out of 10. Like a 6 or something like that. It wasn't a bad race by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't know. I just really thought that I would have been able to do more. You know, I qualified second, so really all I did was fall down the order. I didn't make any overtakes. All I did was get overtaken by people. It was really hard, even with the setup I was running. I'm not sure whether it was the right call to be on the setup I was on. I think maybe if it had been full wet conditions, it would have been a different story. But yeah, on the intermediate tyres, it didn't seem like it made too much of a tangible benefit. If anything, I think it might have been a bit of a hindrance. So yeah, I don't know. The one solace I can take away from this weekend, if I can take away anything, is that we have won this rivalry with Charles Leclerc, and there was still a race left to go. So actually, yeah, I've kind of battered him. So we will be moving the difficulty further up, and that is exactly what I want to see when I'm about to go into Monaco. Knowing that it's going to be even harder for me to get a good quali result than it would have been had I not beaten Charles Leclerc in the rivalry today. But, you know, it adds to the challenge, right? I don't want to be just absolutely dominant week in, week out. So, yeah, it adds a little bit of intrigue and interest to the series. But that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure you like and subscribe. And hopefully I will see you in the next one.